The first time I saw my father after his funeral, he was standing in our old kitchen, holding a camcorder. The tape was dated 4 nights after we buried him. I watched it at my workbench with one headphone on, my left hand still resting on the mouse like I could pause reality if I moved fast enough. The picture was grainy, washed in that yellow kitchen light I remembered from childhood, but there was no mistaking him. Same sloped shoulders, same gray flannel jacket, same way he rubbed his thumb over the side of the camera when he was nervous. He looked toward the pantry door and said softly, "I'm sorry, Caleb." I thought I had more time, then the tape cut to blue. I work as an audiovisual tech for a county library outside St. Louis. That sounds fancier than it is. Most days I digitize old church sermons, retirement parties, little league games, cassette interviews nobody has listened to in 30 years. I know what bad timecodes look like. I know what damaged tape does. I know how easy it is for a date to be wrong if someone never set the camera properly. That was the explanation I reached for first. A bad timestamp. A tape recorded years ago. A trick of memory, grief, and cheap magnetic plastic. My father, Victor Hale, had died of a stroke on a Monday morning in a rehab center in Fairview Heights. I signed the release forms. I chose the casket because my sister Dana couldn't get through the showroom without shaking. I watched them lower him into the ground beside my mother. He could not have stood in our old kitchen 4 nights later. The house had been empty for 20 years. We moved out when I was 9, after my little sister Annie disappeared. She was 5. She vanished from the pantry during a thunderstorm while Dana and I were supposed to be watching her. That's the version people in town repeated, because it was simple enough to fit into their mouths. A little girl wandered off. The back door was found open. The creek behind the property was swollen from rain. Search parties came. Dogs came. Divers came later. Nobody found her. My father never sold the house. He let it sit at the edge of Mason Road, with plywood over the back windows and weeds climbing the porch. He paid taxes on it, fixed the roof when it leaked, replaced the lock every few years. When I asked why, he always said, "Some things are worse when you let strangers touch them." After his funeral, Dana and I finally went to clean it out. The place smelled like dust, old wood, and mouse droppings. Most of the furniture was covered in sheets. My mother's blue mixing bowl was still in a cabinet. The pantry door still stuck halfway, unless you lifted the knob while pulling. Dana wouldn't go near it. "I'll do the kitchen," I told her. "You take the front room." She nodded too quickly, grateful and ashamed at the same time. I found the tapes in a locked metal cabinet in the mudroom, behind paint cans and a stack of folded tarps. Not DVDs. Not VHS. Mini DV tapes, dozens of them, each labeled in my father's blocky handwriting. June 12, 2004. June 12, 2005. June 12, 2006. Every year, same date. Annie's birthday. The last tape had no date written on the label. Just a strip of masking tape and one word. Caleb. I should have called Dana in. That would have been the decent thing. Instead, I slipped 3 tapes into my jacket pocket. It was an old habit. Hide the thing first. Explain later. I had done it as a kid whenever I broke something, whenever I tracked mud into the hall, whenever Annie cried because I snapped at her. My father used to say I was a born editor, always cutting out the part where I looked bad. At work the next morning, I told myself I only wanted to verify what was on them before upsetting my sister. That was half true. The first dated tape showed our kitchen in 2004, 2 years after we moved away. The camera sat on the counter facing the pantry. A cake stood on the table. White frosting. 6 candles. No one was visible, but the audio was full of people. My mother laughing. Dana singing off-key. Me, 9 years old, complaining that the candles were dripping wax. Then Annie's voice, small and bright, right beside the microphone. Again, the singing started over. I took off the headphones and sat there until the digitizing software stopped capturing. My mother died in 2016, but in 2004 she was alive. Dana and I were alive. My father was alive. So the voices could have been taken from an older home video and dubbed over, maybe from before Annie disappeared. Except my parents never owned a camcorder when we were kids. At least I didn't think they did. I checked the tape physically. The shell was clean. No splices. No sign of tampering. The timecode ran continuously. The second tape was from 2011. Same kitchen. Same angle. Same cake but older somehow, the frosting sunken and wet. 13 candles this time. My father stood at the edge of the frame. He was younger than when he died, but older than he should have been in 2011. That's hard to explain. It wasn't makeup or lighting. It was the exhaustion. His hair had gone nearly white. His right hand trembled. He lit the candles one by one. Then he looked toward the pantry and said, "Happy birthday, sweetheart." From inside the pantry, Annie whispered, "Where's Caleb?" My father closed his eyes. He's not ready. I don't remember driving to Dana's house that evening. I remember being parked outside with the engine running and both tapes on the passenger seat. Dana lived 20 minutes from me, in a brick ranch with a porch swing and a husband who worked nights. She opened the door in sweatpants, took one look at me and said, "What did you find?" I told her about the cabinet. I told her about the birthday tapes. I did not tell her about the one labeled with my name. She listened without interrupting, arms crossed so tightly her fingers dug into her sleeves. When I said Annie's voice was on them, Dana turned away. "Dad was sick," she said. "Not then. He was always sick about Annie. That doesn't explain this. It explains enough." She wiped her cheek with the heel of her hand. "He probably made some kind of memorial project. Mixed old audio. Staged it. I don't know. Why would he hide it? Because it's awful, Caleb." The way she said my name made me feel 9 years old again. I almost left it there. I almost let the sane explanation stand between us like a closed door. Then Dana said, "Did you watch all of them?" No, that was my second lie. Her eyes narrowed. She knew me too well. "Don't do this alone," she said. "Whatever Dad was doing, don't make it yours." I promised I wouldn't. An hour later, I was back at my apartment with the tape labeled CALEB loaded into the deck. For the first 30 seconds, there was only black. Not the blue screen of blank tape. Real black, with faint movement under it, as if the lens cap was on and someone was carrying the camera through a dark room. Then a door creaked. The picture brightened. Our old pantry filled the frame from the inside. I knew that pantry better than any room in that house. Narrow shelves on the left. Pegboard on the right. A low crawlspace door at the back that my father had nailed shut after Annie disappeared. I had told police she liked hiding in there. That was true. It was also not the whole truth. On the tape, the crawlspace door stood open. My father's voice came from behind the camera. He sounded weak, breathless. "I kept your place for as long as I could." The camera turned. I saw 9-year-old me sitting on the pantry floor. Not a recording of me from childhood. Not exactly. The boy on the tape was wearing the red Cardinals shirt I had worn the day Annie vanished, but his face was wrong in tiny ways. Too still. Too patient. He looked up at the camera and smiled like he had been waiting for instructions. Then adult Dana stepped into the pantry. I slammed pause. The frame froze with Dana's hand on the doorframe. Not Dana as a kid. Dana now. Same haircut. Same gray sweatpants she had been wearing when I left her house. Behind her, just visible in the dark crawlspace, was Annie's birthday cake. 30 candles unlit. I called Dana 3 times. She didn't answer. On the 4th call, her husband picked up from work and said she had gone out to check on me because I had sounded wrong. I grabbed the tapes, the deck, and the old Canon camcorder from the metal cabinet. I had taken it too, though I hadn't admitted that even to myself. The battery was dead, but the tape inside it was warm. That detail still bothers me more than it should. The old house was 45 minutes away. I made it in 32. Dana's car was in the driveway. The front door stood open. Rain had started, light but steady, tapping through the leaves around the porch. Inside, the house felt larger than it had that morning. Empty rooms do that sometimes, but this was different. My flashlight beam seemed to travel farther than it should, like the dark was making room for it. Dana, no answer. From the kitchen came a thin mechanical whir. The sound of tape rolling. The Canon sat on the counter, aimed at the pantry door. Its red recording light was on. That should have been impossible. The battery I had checked was dead. The power cord was still coiled in my backpack. Dana stood beside the table with her back to me. There was a cake in front of her. Not fresh. Not rotten. Something in between. White frosting glossy with moisture. 30 candles pressed into it in a tight ring. "Dana," I said. She didn't turn. Her shoulders moved with quiet sobs. From inside the pantry, Annie's voice said, "He came." My sister made a sound I had never heard from her before. Half laugh, half wound. I crossed the kitchen, keeping out of the camera's line as much as I could. That was instinct, not bravery. When you work with cameras long enough, you learn where the frame is. You learn what is being captured and what is not. The pantry door was open. The crawlspace door at the back was open too. It had been nailed shut that morning. I remembered the rusted heads of the nails. I remembered because I had run my thumb over one and thought about all the times my father must have looked at that door and chosen not to remove them. From the crawlspace came the smell of wet cardboard and birthday candles. Dana whispered, "She's in there." "No," I said. "You didn't hear her. I heard something. She said she's cold." That almost did it. That almost made me step into the frame. Because when Annie disappeared, Dana blamed herself for falling asleep on the couch. My father blamed the storm. My mother blamed the open back door. I blamed the last thing I said to my sister. She had wanted to play hide and seek. I wanted to watch a baseball game. She kept tugging my sleeve, laughing, saying I never found her because I didn't really look. So I pointed at the pantry and said, "Hide in the crawl space then. I'll count to 1,000. I never told anyone that part." On the tape, my father had known. Or whatever was using him had known. The cameras, motor whirred louder. Dana took one step toward the pantry. I grabbed her wrist. She fought me harder than I expected. Grief gives people strength in strange directions. "Let go," she hissed. "You don't get to decide this." You left her. I could have defended myself. I could have told her I was 9, that I didn't understand storms and swollen creeks and crawl spaces that seemed deeper in the dark. But the truth was smaller and worse. I had been annoyed. That was all. A little girl vanished because I wanted silence. The candles on the cake lit by themselves. One after another. The camcorder shifted on the counter. Not much. Just enough to follow us. I saw the limitation then. It didn't move like a person. It moved like a camera on a tripod being adjusted by a careful hand. Slow pan. Small correction. It needed us in frame. Every tape had been the same angle. Every birthday, every year, the kitchen, the pantry, the cake. My father had not been filming memories. He had been feeding something a scene. And now I had brought Dana into it by watching the tape with her in it. By taking the camera. By refusing to leave the footage alone. I let go of Dana's wrist and stepped fully into the shot. The house went quiet. Even the rain seemed to pause against the windows. From the crawl space, Annie said, "Caleb." It sounded exactly like her. Not the way a recording sounds exact. The way memory does when it finds the one unguarded place in you and presses. I looked at the camera, not the pantry. "I'm here," I said. Dana sobbed behind me. "Don't." The tape motor sped up. On the small flip-out screen, I could see the frame. Me in the foreground, Dana near the table, the pantry open behind us. In the screen, there was someone else standing between us. A little girl in a yellow shirt. When I looked at the room directly, she wasn't there. When I looked at the screen, Annie was smiling. I understood then why my father kept coming back. Why he kept the house. Why he looked 20 years older in the tapes. The camera gave him just enough to stay ruined. Annie lifted one hand on the screen. Adult Dana lifted hers, without seeming to know she was doing it. I did the only useful thing my hands knew how to do. I changed the frame. I grabbed the camcorder and turned it toward the ceiling. The pantry exploded with noise. Not a scream. Not voices. Applause. Dozens of hands clapping from inside that narrow space, the sound flat and wet, like people packed shoulder to shoulder behind the walls. Dana screamed my name. The camera twisted in my grip, trying to pull itself back down. It was stronger than any machine had a right to be. The strap cut into my palm. The red recording light blinked against my knuckles. I slammed the lens against the edge of the counter. Once. Twice. The glass cracked, but the camera kept recording. On the broken flip-out screen, the ceiling stretched into a hallway. At the end of it stood my father in his funeral suit, holding a birthday candle between two fingers. His mouth moved. No sound came out at first. Then his voice filled the kitchen from the camera speaker. "Finish it, son." Dana was halfway into the pantry. I dropped the camera and lunged for her. My shoulder hit the doorframe. Pain flashed bright down my arm, but I got both hands around her waist and pulled. Something pulled back. Not her arms. Not her legs. Her shadow. It had stretched into the crawl space, thin and black, attached to something I could not see. I remembered an old transfer trick from work. Damaged tape sometimes lost tracking when you interrupted the image completely. No image, no lock. No lock, no capture. I ripped my jacket off and threw it over the camcorder. The kitchen vanished into muffled red darkness. The applause stopped. Dana collapsed backward onto me. We hit the floor hard. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she crawled away from the pantry on her elbows, making small broken sounds. Under my jacket, the camcorder kept whirring. The fabric pulsed with the red recording light. I knew covering the lens wasn't enough. It had been carried in darkness before. It could wait. So I picked up the cake. The frosting was cold enough to hurt. I shoved it into the pantry, through the crawlspace door, and then kicked the door shut with everything I had. The old wood slammed. Something on the other side hit it at the same time. Once. Hard. Then again. Dana was screaming for me to leave it. But I saw the nails on the floor. The same rusted nails my father had removed, or that the house had removed for him. I hammered them back in with the heavy metal flashlight, one by one, while something inside the crawlspace scraped along the other side of the door. On the last nail, Annie whispered, I counted to 1,000. I almost missed. The flashlight slipped and smashed my thumb. I still have the scar under the nail. But I drove the last nail in. The camcorder stopped. Dana and I burned the tapes in a metal trash barrel behind the house. That sounds dramatic, but it was clumsy and awful. Mini DV shells don't burn clean. They curl and stink and leave black ribbons twisting in the heat. Dana stood there wrapped in my jacket, staring at the fire with empty eyes. Neither of us spoke until dawn. When the sun came up, the house looked ordinary again. Worse than ordinary. Small. Peeling. Tired. A place that should have been sold a long time ago. We called a demolition company the next week. Dana told her husband we found mold. I told my boss I needed personal leave. Neither of us told anyone else. There are stories people accept from grieving families, and stories that make them look at you like grief has finally finished the job. The house came down in 2 hours. I watched from the road as the excavator tore through the kitchen wall. When the bucket ripped out the pantry, thousands of birthday candles spilled into the dirt. Not boxes of them. Loose candles. Some burned down to stubs. Some new. Some bent. Some so old the wax had gone gray. The contractor asked if we wanted to save anything. Dana said no before I could answer. I thought that was the end of it. For 6 months it almost was. Dana and I talk more now, but not about Annie. Not directly. Sometimes she calls me on June 12, and we sit on the phone without saying much. Sometimes that is the closest a family gets to healing. I stopped digitizing home movies at work. I told my supervisor I had developed headaches from old tape mold, which was embarrassing but believable. Now I handle meeting recordings, local history interviews, things made by people who are mostly still alive. Last Tuesday, a donation box came in from a church basement. Cassettes. Reel-to-reel. A cracked VHS cleaner. Nothing unusual. At the bottom was a mini DV tape with no case. No label. I knew before I touched it. I took it outside behind the library and broke it under my heel. I crushed the shell until the tape ribbon spilled onto the pavement. Then I saw the writing on the clear plastic window. Not a label. Scratch from the inside. Caleb, take 2. I have not told Dana. I have not told anyone. But the security camera above the library's back door recorded me standing there for 7 minutes, staring at the broken tape. I checked the footage myself. For the first 6 minutes, I am alone. In the 7th, a little girl steps into frame beside me, just close enough for the camera to catch the edge of her yellow sleeve. And from somewhere off-screen, my father says, "Better framing this time."